Viewers, good day. The Secret Agent, written by Joseph Conrad. Joseph Conrad, a famous Polish and British writer. So, The Secret Agent, this is a novel, and it starts like this. Mr. Adolf Verloc, a shopkeeper in his 40s, heads out into the London streets one morning, leaving his business in the hands of his wife, Winnie, and Winnie's brother, Stevie. Winnie looks after Stevie, who is mentally disabled, as if he or he is her son. She married Warlock 7 years ago because he had the money and willingness to support her. Stevie and their sickly widowed mother, Warlock, attends a meeting at a foreign embassy with secretary named Mr. Vladimir. Warlock has been secretly employed by the embassy as an undercover agent for 11 years. But Vladimir believes that Warlock has grown lazy and isn't earning his keep. To keep his job, Warlock must give the complacent English a jolly good scar by instigating a terrorist bombing. The bombing will be attributed to anarchists, which will turn public opinion against these revolutionaries. Vladimir recommends staging an attack on science by bombing the Greenwich Observatory. Warlock meets regularly with a revolutionary society called the Future of the Proletariat. The group includes Michaels, a gentle idealist who's out on the parole after being imprisoned for his involvement in robbery. Ossipon, a medical school dropout obsessed with pseudo-scientific theories, and Yund, a would-be terrorist. However, none of these men are violent or particularly effective in any way. Warlock, meanwhile, feels tormented by Vladimir's threat and can't decide what to do next. The story flashes forward to the aftermath of terrorist bombing in Greenwich Park. Ossipon is having a beer with a mysterious figure called the Professor, an anarchist and a bomb maker who has a detonator, an explosive device on his person at all times, because the police know that he'll set off the detonator if they try to arrest him. He wanders the city freely. He also believes his deadly potential makes him superior to other anarchists. When the professor hears about that day's bombing, he readily admits to Ossipon that he supplied Warlock with explosive for the attack. After leaving this meeting, the professor has a menacing run-in with Chief Inspector Heat, the police department expert in anarchist procedure. Chief Inspector Heat is distressed by the bombing. Two men were seen getting off the underground, and the bomber stumbled over a tree root and fell, blowing himself up. Importantly, Inspector Heat salvaged a scrap of a coat from the bomber's remains. Inspector Heat hates anarchists, and when he hears that the suspected bomber arrived on a train from Michaelis neighborhood, he is determined to pin the crime on Michaelis. That way, even though Heat afraid of apprehending the professor, he can still gain a symbolic victory over anarchists. However, Heat's boss and rival, the anarchist commissioner, has society connection to Michaelis through the latter's patroness, and he hopes to exonerate the anarchist for fear of offending the woman. The assistant commissioner decides to take this matter into his own hand. He also examined Heat's scrap of cloth and discovered that the address of Verloc's shop is inked onto it. The story then flashes back to before the bombing. Winnie's mother has secured a place in a retirement home for widows, hoping that leaving Stevie in Winnie's care will be better for him. Although Winnie is upset that this move will make people think that Winnie was a poor caretaker, she and Stevie accompany their mother to the home. During the ride, Stevie is distraught by the cab driver's evident poverty and the way he whips his sick horse. Stevie is deeply affected by others' suffering, and when he can't do anything to resolve it, he becomes quietly enraged. Just after this, Verloc takes a trip to the continent, mainland Europe, for undisclosed reason. Upon his return, Winnie asks him to take a greater interest in Stevie. He's been moping around since their mother left. Verloc and Stevie begin to bond over walks, though when Stevie agitation persists, Winnie agrees that he should be sent to Michaelis' cottage for a stay in the countryside. Unbeknownst to Verloc, Winnie sews Stevie's address into his coat in case he ever gets lost. On the day of the bombing, Verloc comes home in the evening, seeming ill and out of sort. He tells Winnie he's withdrawn his entire saving from his banks on the continent and that he thinks they should move abroad. Their discussion is interrupted by the assistant commissioner's arrival. Winnie asks Verloc if the commissioner is a foreigner for the embassy. She's heard Verloc talking about such things in his sheep. Verloc angrily steps outside with the man. While he's gone, Chief Inspector Heat visits the shop and shows Winnie the scrap from the coat, which she recognizes as Stevie's. When Verloc returns alone, he and the Heat discuss the bombing in the other room. Winnie eavesdrops and puts together the detail, realizing with horror that Stevie was killed in the bombing and that Verloc was responsible. After Inspector Heat leaves, Verloc feels sorry for Winnie. He never meant for Stevie to die. He'd even grown somewhat fond of the loyal boy during their walks, during which he had taught Stevie to distrust the police and prepared him to express his rage against them by bombing the Greenwich Observatory. However, when he tries to explain all this to Winnie, she remains immobile and silent with grief. Verloc thinks that Winnie is being unreasonable and that she's failed to understand how much pressure he's been under because of Vladimir. Anyway, Winnie is partly to blame too for forcing Stevie to spend time with him and for putting his name in his coat, leading the police back to them. Winnie briefly considers escape, but then, in passion, plunges a carving knife into Verloc's chest before he can react. After Verloc dies, Winnie wanders the street, contemplating society in order to avoid being hanged for murder, until she stumbles into Osnician. Ossipon heard about the bombing and was coming to the Verloc on the assumption that Verloc was the man killed. He has feeling for Winnie and also hopes to gain access to Verloc money, so he agrees to help Winnie flee to France. However, Winnie, seemingly unhinged, ranting against Verloc, disturbs him. His fear deepens when he learns that the whole affair is entangled with a foreign embassy. When they stop by the Verloc shop, Ossipon sees Verloc's corpse, realizes the full truth of what's happened and becomes terrified of Winnie. He helps Winnie onto a train for the cost and jump from the train at the last minute. Warlock's money in his pocket. 10 days later, Ossipon has another beer with the professor while they discuss anarchism. Their friend Michaelas persists in idealistic anarchism. Their friend, while Ospison believes that science will eventually rule society, but the professor remained devoted to the destruction of all things. However, Ossipon no longer has much heart for the subject. He is haunted by the news of Winnie's suicide by jumping off the cross-channel ferry. Ossipon and Professor go their separate ways, the professor blending into the London crowd with his hidden explosive, unsuspected and deadly. So this is the story of the Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad. As Joseph Conrad was an English novelist of Polish ancestry and British citizen, he was born, that was then Russian Empire. His Polish parents were exiled for nationalist activity. He had written many outstanding books like Heart of Darkness and Lord Jim. And this anarchism is an umbrella term for political philosophies and movements that reject hierarchical authority and typically seek to abolish the state. It is associated with anti-capitalist and libertarian socialist thought. A range of anarchist perspective is reflected in Secret Agent. Some, like the professor, favor violent revolutionary tactic. Other, like Michaelis, who may have been based on the Russian philosopher Peter Kropotkin, reject violent measure. So this is the theme of this story, The Secret Agent, which was written in 1906 in France and London, published in 1907. And genre of this novel is spy and thriller. Setting of this novel is London, England. Climax, Winnie Warlock stabs Adolf Warlock to death. This is the climax. Antagonist of this novel is anarchist terrorism, Mr. Vladimir, Mr. Adolf Warlock. So this is the novel, The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad. I hope you will enjoy this. Thank you.